Welcome everyone. This is instructional video number 9 on the light cell energy frequency body of light. So we're continuing on in our discussion about our light cell energy frequencies, our bodies of light, in other words. They're the ones that hold our energy in tight. So we hold an encapsulation of our own light within our energy fields of light. These energy fields are burning revelation of what is right in our light. So we start to see and we field our energy differently than we once did before, because we feel that energy right to the core. And it's our core root chakra of light. When we get dissolved in our higher insight, we begin to reflect our higher light. And as we're proponents of the higher light, we begin to shelve lesser desirable light. When we begin to seal that conviction of truth in our heart of hearts and in our divine mind's eye of light, we begin to reach a dynamic new height. We begin to score for ourselves our higher light, because we're all beings of higher, significantly higher light. When we once came in here on a dream, we challenged ourselves to be seen in the higher light. We came in here on a vision, on a dream of light, of higher light, and we scored for ourselves a higher insight. Then we turned all of that to our higher grade of light. So once in a while, we do feel energy here on the planet that is fear-based. They're molecules in the air. They're molecular space. And when these molecular spaces become available to ascension purposes, they molecularly change in the cellular, molecular light cell energy frequency bodies of light. So when our ascension purposes come to light, we start to reflect that in our higher insight. So when we were downgraded in the lesser light or the lower light, or even someone's concept of the darker light, we proposed a team of energy that would bring us into our higher insight, that would encapsulate us in a new direction of higher light. And it was exposed to the truth of the higher beings of light. And when we manufactured enough cell light, damaging, distraught energy fields that were brought to us to produce yield, we decided to field those energies out. We correlated them all together in certain specific bandwidths of time, and we allowed them to be pre-aligned with the downward direction of the inferior mind. Once we encapsulated all those darker thoughts, we were able to plot them on a course of light that would bring them back to their higher light. So all of this has been a rest and digest, beginning to end, cosmic consciousness, awareness, awakening, all over again. It produces, it yields a higher fruit of light. It basically becomes our directional guidance system overnight. So we snap to, it's like an elastic band that expands and then contracts. Every thought we make, every image that we stake claim to, begins to come online with the higher divinity line of time. And as we progress on our holier lines, we begin to digress into the darker light. All of us have spoken about this to your own dark of night when you were feeling down and out and unaware of what was going on all around us in the air. You were subjected to give yourself more care. You delineated that you were being strangled by the older, denser, more cosmic, unconscious awareness. And you decided to send a beam of thought to your higher energy fields, where they were taught previously how to turn them around and to ground that energy into Mother Gaia's root chakra sound and her termination points of light. Take you in and hold you in tight. So she gives you the depth and breadth of your own exterior light. And these are caught up and welded or molded or framed into your higher light. So these higher expressions of your higher genetic codes come online. The synapses trip these angelic codes and they fire up in the lymphatic nodes and they begin an explosion over your root chakra timelines that were not divine. Well, they were of a lesser divinity line of time. But your progression in your higher thought brought all of that energy to knot on specific timelines where they were rehearsed to be of a higher mind. So all of this explosion of networks and neural codes and encodings and timelines are processed and reprocessed along our divinity lines of time to encase us in the higher mind. So no matter what less divine energy we had entrained our light to, it could be overridden by a new program that was sent to you through your divine lines of time. They are your energetic minds, and they lift you up when you are feeling less divine. So all of this curtailing of our older energy spheres of light there was a curtailing motion, a synthesis of divine explosion of light. They were curtailed on your darker light. So it's not that everyone reprocessed their higher light into their down lines or lesser lines of time. Not everyone's energy was encapsulated as divine. Right from the beginning, some encoded themselves as less divine. They promised themselves that they would highlight their higher mind and go through the experience of their delinquent lower tests of time. And this is the energy that they use to test their own divine mind, because they could see through many divine lines of time, and they correlated their lesser divine line into the higher frequency timeline, and there they could encode their higher lymphatic nodes across their timelines. They were never sentenced to sin, as some would call it here. They allowed their own energy to twin with their magnetic light. And this is the energy of turning on your higher insight. So when you gain the higher codes of light within the cerebral cortices of your mind's eye, your third eye, your elemental eye, you were allowed to download the higher energetic codes of freedom, of lifting your lymph nodes across wavelengths of time into the higher divinity codes of your higher mind. And this is what lessened over time. You were learning how to turn on your higher mind. So all of us have a frequency that is divine, and these divine codes of light are engineered such that you will retain your higher insight, and the web of knowledge will turn on your higher light. So your divinity structures are always gained and held in tight. There is a molecule that turns on your higher light, and it is streamed into the knowledge of which dimensional route is right for that particular person at that particular time in any of their given timelines. They may have chosen a frequency that's less divine, but it all gets cleared. All of the synapses have reappeared into the higher light. So there is no one who is feeling great distancing or in alignment with their fear energy. They're allowing themselves to see their higher fields of light through this energy fright, because it predetermines which energy for them, for their course codes, is right. Everyone has a different light cell energy body structure of light. Everyone feeds their own energy just right for them. It is a momentous occasion when they begin to twin their energy. Their light cell energy frequency bodies of light spark on, and they move towards their divinity light. And once upon a time, they knew this energy was right for them, because it was their higher insight. And that in turn switched them into their higher divinity codes of light. So it's all been an entraining mechanism to reach the truth from the darkness that was outlined in their lesser divinity lines of time. So these encodings brought us to the higher mind. We're feeding you, we're sending you, we're envisioning for you these higher light loads of time in which you can turn your divinity mind and entrain it to the higher mind, the higher way of being divine. All of our energy codes come online when we feed them into the directional code bandwidth of the higher timeline. So for all of us here on Mother Gaia, on our planet of light, her energy turns every one of us on very bright. It's a syllabus of coming to the light. It's an energy that we hold in tight. We hold the divine masculine energy in tight. We hold the divine genetically explored divine feminine light. We hold everybody's divinity in tight to our heart chakras of light. And these fields of light, they burn at such a high electricity that they begin to switch on other beings' cells of light. So it becomes a cascading effect down through the ages. One plugs in at a particular timeline or age, like age of Aquarius. Another one shifts their downloads into another line of time. And every one of these turns on a dime. So you begin to be engaged in the higher divinity line of time. And this is what changes our frequency to the higher mind. And everybody gets to reclaim their higher divinity codes. Everyone chose the lymph nodes of time, and they would drain them when they needed more angelic codes. So all of this shifting into the light came through as a manufacturing in their own highest divinity light. And the light cell energy frequency codes of light align them with their higher insight. So when we begin to twin In other words, when we begin to bring that elastic energy of our own light back in, so in other words, it's stretched out, it's stretched away, now we're bringing it back in, we begin to twin our light cell energy frequency bodies within this gateway of time. And the lords of time are simply divine energy lights which hold our frequency to the highest light. The Time Lords record your energy when you turned it to lesser light. In other words, when you felt fright. Then they repositioned it to field higher light in your higher dynamic insight, your divinity codes of light. So all of the structures of light came on in the light cell energy frequency bodies of light at one time. When they were feeling more divine, they had a higher time, a higher bandwidth of time. They were more elastic on the higher line. And when they were fed lesser divine lines of time, they became inelastic. It's like a material that wouldn't bend. So they held it straight for you. And then you began to contend with that energy. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel as awesome as being in the higher light. So we contested that line of time and we drove it into the divinity line of time. And it was magnetized to the higher energy line. So we began to twin. We began to reach forward into our divine lineage lines of time. And we drew it, we attracted it back in. So we magnetically twin with the higher arcing mannerism in which we began. So we all begin again. So there is that motion, that moment in time when we begin. We stretch out. We explore different aspects of self. And then we release and relax it back in. And we begin to twin our energy again. And then we know where our fields of energy begin. So it's all about expansion and contraction. The light cell energy frequency bodies of light hold that impaction. They hold the truth. They hold the magnetic root, the root chakra of light for us. And when we beam electrical scenes of light to these higher beings who graciously hold our light, whether it's an inferior light or a superior light, a higher or lesser, greater, not so much, we begin to unfold the higher team's knowledge that is revealed in the higher light streams of energy. It's angelic codes, and they're beamed directly through to the pineal. And then they explore new bandwidths of time. They explode new neural networks in synaptic timelines. And we all begin to be intertwined with dynamic, shaped heart lines of time. And these frequencies come from the divine. These are source code. These are angelic code lines of time. So everybody refreshes their energy on their highest divinity line of time. Everyone gets encoded in their higher mind. If they are choosing to be less divine, then their energy core will not subjugate them to any more of the higher divinity lines of time. They're released and relaxed out of their magnetic core. So once you are divinity trained, you will never feel disdain for your higher brain. Because until you do, you will correlate your lines of time to the lesser divinity tracks within you that you're harboring in your higher light. So all of our divinity codes come in and we become white light. We become codes of angelic light. We become networks of our higher divinity lines of time, and we encode them in the higher nodes of time, where they're held in little encapsulations, little light cells or light energy bodies of light. And then they're disseminated through everybody's energy. And it's in their higher insight that we plant these seeds of light. And everyone turns to their higher frequency of light. More so over higher motions of energy, lines of time, than on the less divine lines of time. They're encoded in higher divinity minds. So more beings of light come on board. In other words, more destructiveness gets shoved off board. It's off the timeline switch. The Time Lords know which switch and which light works the best. So they work with the higher, more dynamic sections of timelines and wavelengths. They energize the higher mind and they denigrate the lesser lines when it comes time for the Time Lords to release and relax the old energy spheres out, those old rhythms of antiquated fear. Like when we're done with it, when we're done with our tests of time, when we're done testing ourselves about our divinity lines of time, the Time Lords sweep them out of the encodings of the higher mind. They lessen the lesser divine minds and lines of time because they correlated with our higher minds. So every one of us can be a Time Lord at certain junctures in our thought process about timeline encodings. Many more of us are going to be entrained in this higher light, in the higher light cell energy frequency bodies of light that are within the planetary codes of light. They're exploding their neural network codes into the higher divinity loads of time. So everyone has a dynamic recipe, I'm going to call it, for the higher lines of time. As we are subjected to more traces or tracks of training, you become more inclined to be with the divinity minds of time. It's just the way the tracking has begun. When you begin, you are angelic beings of the sun light, the solar flares of energy timelines and wavelengths of time. Then you become less divine. Then you go into the encoding of the inferior mind. So it all lessens over a track of time. And soon enough, you will reinforce the older codes of light and bring them back in to your higher dynamic insight of higher light. And then you will be encoded in your higher streams of light. And then the angelic codes come online. And they show you miraculous insight. And then you take great delight because you've learned from your own self, from your own process of your divinity light, how you can regress and then progress all of your divinity codes of light. And then once the angelic streams of light come on, you have snapped to attention in the higher divinity codes of light. So they start to give you an angelic respite. They start to turn you back to your higher light. And all this engineering, it's pre-engineering, it's genetic encoding from the beginning line of time here on your planet and others as well. They begin this encoding in the lesser light to bring you back to higher light. It's all a process of learning lower, disintegrating light because it encapsulates the lines of time that were less divine. They become regurgitated to the higher signs of time. And there, they are lessened and learned to be less divine, root chakra, higher mind, and then the transference to the divine lines of time. So it's all a process. It's hidden. It's hidden codes of light from you. So when you first start out, you knew what you came here to do, but then they were lessened across the timelines, the wavelengths of time, where you became less divine, and your energy was genetically reworked on a higher line of time. You've had all these parallel lifetimes that were less divine, and now you're a rocket ship that goes to the higher mind. So all these old encodings were to elevate your fear. And your fear structures are what drove you here. Because Mother Gaia needed you, needed us to be clear in the higher mind. There is no way of functioning in the lesser line of time until you revert back to the divine mind. There are other lesser lines of time that you could scope out and be less divine on, but there are also frequencies of divinity mind that come in and clear those lesser lines of time. So it's a frontal lobe training. You're beginning to release your fear and all your antiquity in the lesser light is cleared. So this is what Mother Gaia does for you here. She lifts you up in your genetic codes, and she more or less lets you know which energy to flow. And if you're in resistance, you will know, because you will feel the fear flow. And if you're in a dynamic causal form that can clear this energy, then you will feel divine. And the divine lines of time will help you skip over these genetic lines and understand the relaying messages that you were once here and you were once energetically clear, and how you chose to make your own light disappear. And the light cell energy frequency bodies of light in the frontal lobe, they begin to come back. They begin to clear the frontal lobe of old lines of time that were less divine. And your imagery, your third eye, your divine mind begins to realign all the encapsulations from your negative past history timelines. So all of us have been encoded in the higher divinity lines of time. This is a reprocessing, and we keep repeating this. It's going to be over lessening lines of time, bringing them into the higher divinity lines of the higher mind. All of this is a genetic truth. It will enfold you in their light. So when we are reprocessing others and others' fields of light, we may not feel quite right. We may feel ancestral lineages of lines that come up for us to look at that are less divine. So we're not always in our divinity line of time. We're not always reprocessing lesser lines. Sometimes it may appear that our direction here was just to steer angelic spheres of light to make or to burn everybody's energy very bright. Sometimes we come in on higher divinity light, and these angelic codes, these higher lymph nodes of time, as we call it, encapsulate these higher beings of light, and they start to turn your magnetics on, and they hold your bandwidth in the higher lines of time. These are all divinity structures of the higher mind. So we encode others with our higher mind. This is what some of us bring forward to teach about our genetic mind. more and more of us are reprocessing higher lines of time and higher divinity signs, encodements in the higher line. These angelic beings, they're freedom fighters of light. They're angelic encodings in the higher light. They reprocess everyone's energy, literally overnight. So you can go to bed one night and feel one bandwidth of thought. In other words, how you're thinking, acting, behaving, choosing to live. And then, bang, overnight, you get caught in this higher cerebral knot. And it challenges you to become uncaught from that web of knowledge that you were taught on the lesser divinity lines of time. And if you regurgitate them to your higher mind, your higher divinity codes come online. And then there is no more processing on less divine lines of time, because you have encoded with your higher mind. This is what angelic spheres of angelic lines of time are processing here on your divinity lines. They're giving you a higher scope, a higher light, a higher way of being in your own angelic light. Because everyone devours higher light. It makes them feel good. They like reprocessing higher light. It lifts them up. Their embodiment is now good on the planet. It feels justified. It feels right. It feels dynamic. It feels like, yes, a breath of fresh air. This is why we're here. Now I understand the encoding in the higher light. Now I know which way is right for me, which bandwidth I'm entrained on, and which divinity line of time feeds me, my divine mind. There is an understanding in the light cell energy frequency bodies of light that flash on in a momentary notice, and you've got it. We've got it. We get it. We're here to clean this energy sphere. And our template is now fear cleared. In other words, we have lessened it to the degree that it needed to be for why we are here, for our purpose. Our genetic codes flash online in the higher divinity mind, our third eye. This is our third eye. This is our higher mind, and our higher line of time gets entrained to our divinity mind. So this is why we need the pineal awakening. This is why we need to strengthen your light. This is why we bring in people with angelic codes of light, because they're the ones who strengthen your higher insight. They're the angelic code holders of the highest light. And they begin to reprocess you overnight. There is no lesser divinity code. And once you learn how to explode them in your neural networks and encode them in the light, they become a recipe for your highest light. And then they snap too. They correlate with you. They understand the frequency that you're telling them to do. This is a reworking of the energy core codes in you. That's where they're held, in the light cell energy frequencies, the bodies of light with which you instructed yourself to hold in tight. So we all become this wonderful energetic sphere of light. And it's a golden globe of light. It looks like we have released all of our energetic insight from the higher light. We've reprocessed it into the lower light, and that divinity code comes back on in our higher insight. So this is the weaving motion. We go in and out and up and down, and the frequency can resound in our higher ground of light, which Mother Gaia holds in tight. So we're all connected, we're interconnected with all the other species of higher light. We're all divinity codes of light. We're all in. We've wrapped ourselves in our light cell energy frequency codes of light. This is why we come here. This is why we originate some here. This is why we are no longer delinquent with our energy spheres, because we encode the higher light, and the angelics give us this higher insight. So no more beating around the bush about our higher light. We encase it, we embrace it, we love it. We are frequencies of higher light, and we expose the truth to other light. And once all of our divinity codes come online, we have regurgitated our cells in the higher divinity lines of time. And once the cells are encoded in the higher light, they receive instruction from your higher insight. And then we download the magnetic codes into the core of your higher light, and we set them to seed your higher insight. This is all the process of burning white light, of bringing ourselves to the white light. And this is our energy insight. We are beings of higher light. And then we can encode any higher energy. It's like a strobe, like the old strobe lights and the discos. There's a strobe light that pulses through every age. So the age of Aquarius, the age of Pisces, whatever network of time that we are finding ourselves in, that we've chosen to be divinity structures in, we release certain codes at certain timelines, like the Time Lords, who are divinity lines of time. They're encoded with more Time Lord training mechanisms to uplift and upload the higher genetic codes of time and rebirthing on which timeline that we choose to become divine. This is our energy code. This is our energy code of time. This is our codal line of time. We are restituting our higher divinity mind on this code of time. And all of us have been less divine. Every one of us on this planetary significance at this time have been born of lesser divine lineage lines. And now we're entrapping that old truth, and we're becoming less divine, reprocessed to the higher mind. So we've all encoded ourselves and our cells into lesser genetic lines of time. This is the dissolving of the species of the races of time. We are engineering high genetic codes of time. And it's the white divinity lines that embellish us, that create the creativity of divine lines of time. We are a creationist momentum coming online. And in the lesser lines of time, they, throughout their divinity mind, they wanted to learn what it was like to explore their new angelic core to the higher light. They reprocessed everybody's higher light. It was an angelic code dream of higher light. So everyone's ancestors knew which way was right to the higher light. In other words, they knew their pathway to the higher light from their lesser, lower light. So everyone knew what to do. When we came through here to uplift our higher dynamic codes of light into your inferior codes of light, you became a reprocessing unit of the highest timeline, of the highest encoding of your highest divinity light. We have been reprocessing time and again, over and over and over, bandwidths of higher lines of time and lights of time. We have been encoded with energies that can turn us on a dime. We can be respined genetically, engineered to be of a higher divine mind. So all of us have been reprocessing our higher divine minds. And we are landlords of the highest mind. So we're reprocessing the higher lines of time. Many of us fielded energy that was less divine. Many of us felt encapsulated on lesser divine lines of time. It was an excruciating pain for some to become less divine, but they learned from their own energy codes how it was to be less divine. And then they perpetrated all sorts of nonsense, and then they became divine. So they learned from their lessoning over time. And this was all the doing of the higher divinity codes of higher mind. This was a lesson they learned over time. And these time waves are caught in we're going to call it a cerebral knot of time, because this is the way we were taught, this is the way the energy was exposed, and this is how we chose to be part of the light. It was all in a divinity encodement time of light. So we have resuscitated everybody's higher insight. There is a bandwidth of time that helps you lift up and become divine. When we've chosen our particular divinity line, we know the obstructing codes that kept us less divine, and we learn, we release them and let them go, and then we clear ourselves, and our divinity knows which way to flow. So we're already in that process of letting go. We're already taking it very slow in the encoding, because we want to make a match with the divine light. It's harboring our highest light. So we want to match the encoding over time and make sure that there's no slip-ups of beings on lesser divine lines of time. We're always encoding the higher mind. So learn the lessons of this process over time. Learn the encodings that switch you to your own divinity mind. And then your ascension process can turn on a dime. So you'll be going from the darker, lesser lines of time into your divinity mind, which brings on the ascension codes, the ascension timelines that lift you into the higher nodes. They will not release or relax you until you have encoded the higher bandwidth of the higher divinity lines of time. And this is where our encoding brings you to the higher mind. So over and over again, we repeat this process from the lesser divine to the higher mind. It's one in which we've been entrained for many millennia, over many timelines, and many energy codes are lifted up that were once never divine. They were never, ever hidden on anybody's higher line. They were just a mishmash of old codes. And they were disheartening, to say the least, until the angelic codes came online from another bandwidth, from another time. And they implored the lesser codes to let go and allow them the strength to know the higher codes in the divine light. And many beings of light let them know that they would accept this energy show, and others said no. And their corrupt energy waves were replaced with the divine grace, because they were allowed to let go. And they were allowed to not show their own trace roots of light. They were allowed to disintegrate into the higher light. They were rested and digested into divine energy codes, source codes of beings of light. And that's where they rested their light. So there's much encoding going on in the higher light. There's much to do with energy raising conscious awareness here in you. And there is much more to do. There's much left to do of clearing here. It's true. But these divinity codes have not lost their properties of being conducted into the higher nodes of time. They lift you up where you have felt less divine. So the process is coming online. We restituted a higher mind, and this is the light that we have assigned many light beings of similar directional and coded minds. So we rest and digest that energy distress. We allow it to go into their own fields of darkness, and then we bring them back to the light, and their own energy can scope out their highest divinity light. And this is where they rest, in sincere frequency of light. So thank you all for listening to our divine light message from our light cell energy frequency bodies of light. And we will continue on with our final episode of our instructional video next time. Be blessed and of the higher divinity mind and line of time.